You'll go home mad a lot of times and don't think you'll ever get through it. And for some reason, the next day comes and something happens and you figure it out.
After you hit your thumb with a hammer so many times, you figure out it hurts.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Horsepower Heritage. I'm Maurice Merrick. And greetings to all of you listening from places like Steubenville, Ohio, Coon Rapids, Minnesota, Trois-Rivières, Quebec, Oudenaarde, Belgium, and Croydon, England, south of London. Thank you for listening, and I just have to say I have a very loyal audience because, I look at the download data every week and I enjoy sharing that list of cities and towns with you. And I do that as a small display of gratitude for the time you invest in listening to the show. And it's pretty cool how far this humble little podcast reaches. So if you're new here, welcome, and I'd like to ask you to please follow the show on your favorite podcast app and leave me 5 stars and just a short review if you can. It depends on the app you're using, of course, but it really helps other people discover the show. One other thing I want to mention, it's been a long time since I've done a storytelling episode. The last one was The Mighty Merlin back on January 25th. Long time. And that's because I've been so busy interviewing a long parade of great guests, and I really haven't had time to dive into more storytelling pieces. But I know you guys enjoy those, so rest assured I haven't abandoned that format. I've just got to keep moving. So much is happening behind the scenes, but the story episodes will return. Meanwhile, for those of you who haven't heard some of those episodes, check them out. They're basically like audio documentaries, and I think you'll enjoy them. One other thing is, I really want to hear from you. If you're a fan of the show, drop me a line and just say hello. Tell me what you like about the show. Tell me about your cars or whatever. I love hearing from you guys, and I want the podcast to be interactive. So if you want to get in touch, just go to horsepowerheritage.com and click on the contact button at the top of the homepage, and that's all there is to it. Let's get on to new business and talk about today's episode. Lately, I've been featuring more American muscle here on the podcast, and today's guests pretty much walk on water when it comes to that. They're humble guys, and they deny it, but I put them right up there with legends like Dean Moon, Boyd Coddington, Chip Foose. Mike and Jim Ring build some of the hottest restomods you'll ever see from their shop in the little town of Spring Green, Wisconsin. And it's worth noting that the state of Wisconsin has a really important place in automotive history. Nash Motors was in Kenosha, which later became American Motors Corporation, AMC. And of course, let's not forget motorcycles. Harley-Davidson is in Milwaukee. And then there's Road America, one of the finest race courses in the world. And there are small quarter-mile and half-mile tracks and lots of great back roads. So muscle cars have always been a big deal in Wisconsin. So from that small shop in Spring Green, cars built by the Ring brothers have made a big splash in the world of custom performance. At shows like SEMA and in all the big magazines, their builds are just top-notch and very exciting. But Mike and Jim are just a couple of soft-spoken, hard-working guys from small-town America. And when I interviewed them, it was just a regular day in the shop. The phones were ringing, and there was work to get done. So I want to thank them for taking the time to sit down and have this conversation. Jim and Mike aren't about self-promotion or marketing. It's no nonsense with them. It's the real deal, 100%. They just love what they do, and they've done it well. So I hope you enjoy this one. It's the Ring Brothers. And that's coming up right after this. Hey guys, here are 3 scale model exotic cars you can find right now at modelcitizendiecast.com. First, it's the 1974 Lamborghini Urraco. Second, a Lamborghini Countach 25th Anniversary Edition. And third, a 1992 Bugatti EB110 Supersport. 3 great exotics to start your model car collection. They're all in pocket-size 1/43rd scale, so they're easy to display just about anywhere, from your desktop to your dashboard. Go to modelcitizendiecast.com and use the promo code HPHeritage to get 10% off your order. Limitations apply. From race cars to street cars and everything in between, it's Model Citizen Diecast. Because your inner child still wants to play with cars. Mike and Jim Ring, thanks for coming on the show. Great to see you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's good to be here. We're always excited to do these and get our name out there. There's a lot of people that don't know who we are, but hopefully a few more will know after this.
You guys are known as two of the world's top customizers. I know there's a lot of great, talented people out there, but your builds are amazing. So we're going to get into it today. In an alternate universe, if today's technology had been available in the 1960s, that's how I picture a Ring Brothers car. That's what I think it would look like. You know, that classic styling, but that precision, that fit and finish of the 21st century. I don't know. That's just, does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, we try to take some of the ugly out of it and at least what bothers us, and then put the technology in. So yeah, I think you nailed it.
I mean, I would call it a resto mod, what you guys do, but I don't think that covers it. Like, it's almost, to me, it's like a hyper custom, you know, because there's not a single piece of that car that isn't carefully considered and gone through and made your own. But how did two guys from Wisconsin, whose dad owned a gas station, end up being the world's top customizers?
Well, I don't think we are, but we've got some very good employees and a lot of good help. We've met the right people, I think, over the years to help us get where we've got. And in the end, we're just a couple small town hot rod builders that have been blessed to have some really good people.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I know you guys have a huge team of people, and you've been fortunate enough to assemble a wider team, right? The industry team, whether it's Detroit Speed or the Roadster Shop or what have you. You guys have all kinds of partners in the builds.
No, that is correct. Like I said, we've met a lot of the right people over the years, and it's really helped us. You know, you definitely don't have the answers for everything, but it's good to have the right guy to call when you need that extra help.
Guys, who's the older of the two of you?
The one that looks all pale right now with all the body dust all over him. So, yeah, I'm 2 years older. Jim's the baby of 7, and then me.
Yeah, 7 kids in a little house in small town America, right?
Yep.
So your dad had a gas station, and that's kind of where this all started.
Actually, Dad had the gas station, but with 7 kids, I think he ended up selling it to my brother, the oldest sibling, when he was right out of the Navy. So probably 21. So that made Jim, 7. So really, Jim and I had nothing to do with our dad's gas station. We were tinkering with stuff, but it was mostly stuff out of the construction company's dumpster, because it was more small engines and stuff that we would take out and work on that. So I ended up working for my brother later on, but I think it came from just digging small engines out of a dumpster at a construction site, or their building where they were.
Yeah, obviously you guys had both kind of had a curiosity about this stuff. And did it come naturally, or was it just trial and error?
Trial and error. You know, we didn't go to college, but we certainly went to the school of hard knocks. You know, we grew up with nothing, just like everybody else in rural America back then. And the only way to get anywhere was to either work for it or steal it. But we decided to work for it.
It wouldn't be the same if you guys were in prison together. It just wouldn't be the same.
Yeah, I don't think it'd work out. But yeah, I don't know why people have the love for gas and oil, but I mean, I think the home run for us was to find a 3 horsepower motor that the shaft was coming out the side instead of the lawnmowers that we always got. It was coming out the bottom, and we really weren't smart enough to try to make something work with the shaft coming out the bottom. So yeah, it was a big deal to find a motor with the shaft coming out the side of it. So
I've told this story a couple times with a lawnmower engine coming out the bottom of it, but my dad had got a airplane propeller he traded from a salvage guy for a couple gallons of gas because he didn't have any money. And I decided to make a helicopter out of an airplane propeller with 2x2s and a lawnmower motor and a pipe for the shaft and an old itchy school seat. Remember the fiberglass seat screwed down that you had in school when we grew up, and they'd give you fiberglass slivers all over? But
Absolutely.
my uncle walked out the back door and said, "If that thing starts, you're dead." Um, it never did start.
Yeah, I mean, you could get into a lot of trouble tinkering in the garage or playing with gunpowder or gasoline, all that stuff.
So you know a little of our history then, I take it. Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to do my research.
It's all true, unfortunately.
I did the same thing. Shotgun shells with a Estes model rocket, you know?
Sure.
We used to take the Estes model rockets and a shotgun shell and put a firing pin on the nose cone and try to make, you know, a bazooka or whatever.
Yeah, but I think all kids had that. Well, not all kids, but we sure did have that. We wanted to make stuff explode or go faster or both.
Go to the moon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also, you know, living in a rural area, at least living outside of the city, and then the fact that we're all old enough that we didn't have smartphones and we didn't have a whole lot of money in our pocket, you had to find a way to entertain yourself, right? And I would leave the house at 8 o'clock in the morning and I wouldn't be home till dinner, and nobody seemed to care where I was or what was going on. We were free spirits, right? We were just like feral children.
Yep. When the police officers used to chase us, we were pretty smart. We knew where all the clotheslines were behind the houses. So we'd just run and duck under them, and that would be one way to get away in a hurry.
Yeah, for sure. But of course, the cops knew where you lived anyway, right? So
Yeah, they
They
did.
never knew who we were, I don't think.
There's a lot of kids in our street, so we could blame each other if they didn't catch you.
So I know you guys didn't start building cars. Mike, you were operating a gas station. Jim, you were in Chicago doing construction.
At that time, I was actually a crane operator for a construction company. Yeah.
And so you bought a car at an auction or something, right? And decided to take it apart and rebuild it?
I was in Chicago, and it was right after I had been married and knew I didn't want to raise my kids down there. So I found a 69 Indy Pace car Camaro in the paper in Chicago for $5,000. And I actually went down, and I had no money. So I went down to the corner bank and asked them to borrow me $5,000, and they did. Drug that car home and restored it in my mother's basement, and kind of got the itch then to be around cars. So come home every weekend from Chicago and work on it. And until I sold it, I had a little bit of money and I started the business.
And then, Mike, when did you come into the picture with Jim?
So Jim probably did that in late 80s, 89-ish, and he started probably around then. And 94, I came back and bought in with Jim. So February of 94. So it's going to be 30 years next year.
Congratulations. Was it restoration? Was it paint and body, collision repair? How did the business form initially?
Any way to pay the bills at that point. You know, we do oil changes. We do collision work. Hell, we'd mow your yard if you wanted us to. But we just had to try to figure out how to pay the bills, and then basically just started tinkering with our own cars. You know, we'd buy a car and fix it up and sell it. And I think that's kind of how we got noticed in the beginning, by just doing that and showing up at a show with something. Actually, it was so wild back then that people would say, "Why did you guys ruin that car?"
That was kind of, that timeline put you kind of into the, sort of the peak of the pro street era, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Jim started out in restorations. He figured out there was no money there. When I came back, we really didn't do any restorations. We just, like I said, changed oil, tires, brakes, exhaust, whatever. And then Jim always wanted to do something a little different. So we started with, I don't even remember. We did an early Mustang convertible and then Camaros, and just did a few and sold them, and finally had somebody ask us to build one for them. And that was kind of the takeoff.
But was there ever any like Votech classes or auto shop in high school or anything like that? It's just all self-taught?
We had auto mech in high school. We didn't learn much in there, but we, it was probably at least my favorite class. I don't know about Mike's, but
The only one I passed, I think.
Yeah, we had a great teacher, and it was a way to get out of class, that's for sure.
So, in terms of the business, you guys were just, making it happen on the job.
Yeah, there was no blueprint. We just, if we'd had to write a business plan, there's no way. We just, it's just like you just do it, right? It's like you just figure it out as you go. And that's kind of what we've done, and hired people that knew a little more than us sometimes. And you just grew, and the people you met to your own abilities. And it all works out if you really, like Jim always used the word grit. If you got the grit, it'll come, right? You'll figure it out.
Yeah, and like you say, you got to pay the bills.
Yeah, you'll go home mad a lot of times and don't think you'll ever get through it. And for some reason, the next day comes and something happens, and you figure it out.
After you hit your thumb with a hammer so many times, you figure out it hurts.
So true. Well, and I'm sure you guys, if you're like me, and I'm just a shade tree mechanic, but probably when you were starting out, you had to do a job 3 times to get it right once, right?
Oh yeah, we do it right because we do it twice. Yeah,
There you go.
it's a lot of truth to that. Yeah, and that's where you learn. When it costs you in the back pocket, you don't learn if it goes easy.
So, Mike, what is Jim good at? What are his talents, his strengths? Because I know you guys both bring different things to the business. I'm sure you have a lot of overlapping skills, but what's Jim good at?
Well, his creativity, he always seems to look at things in a different way than most people. I think that's probably his biggest thing, is to come up with ideas that, I mean, he always said, you don't like it because you've never seen it, if I don't like something. And there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, his wiring, I think, is as good. I don't think there's anybody better. I think there might be somebody as good, but I don't think there's anybody better as far as neat. He always says somebody's going to take this apart someday. And I think he's really meticulous in that. And just assembly, his mind is really good on putting things together, foreseeing things that are in the way or what's going to be a problem. And he's a good brother.
And Jim, how about Mike?
Well, we wouldn't even have this business if it wasn't for him. I mean, I don't think there's anybody on the planet can do body and paint work like he does. I mean, he could go blind tomorrow and still be as good as he was with his eyes, because he doesn't have to see anything; he can feel it. And like I said, this business wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him.
Mike, I know you're happy kind of sanding sheet metal all day long, really? I mean, that you get a lot of joy out of that.
That's weird, but yeah, I think there's a few weird people like me out there that you can kind of get lost. And weekends are better because there's less distractions with phones and the day-to-day thing that we have to deal with. There's a lot to run a business. Thank God we've got the girls here to do most, if not all, from payroll to websites to insurance to, as you know, to run a business. And we're lucky enough to do just work. But even with that, there's a lot of people here that need input. And so it's hard to actually do what you like to do a lot of times till the weekend. And then that's where you can really get lost in it and really see some headway.
And I'm sure that the phone never stops ringing. You guys have enough clients to last you until probably the day you retire. So
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think one thing about us is we don't try to get everybody to sign on the dotted line, right? We don't really want more in here. I mean, we see shops that, man, there's shops with 2 to 5 guys and they got 30 cars in there. And we're like, we couldn't finish 30 cars of what we got left in our thing.
Okay.
So we don't understand how the math works out there. Plus, if you get a bunch of cars and you have your hourly rate, and then 3 years, 4 years, when you get to those other cars, you're kind of pigeonholed into work that. So for us, the work we have right now is the work we have. We don't really try to book out for. It just takes a few years to do each car, right? So.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You guys can take your pick and do it at your pace. And that's an awesome luxury, but of course, there's a lot of hard work behind the position you're in.
Yeah, that's for sure. And it's still hard to find that right client. I mean, we've been lucky and found a lot of good people, but it's not. You don't take that for granted because at the end of the day, it's everybody's got a budget. You still have to get them done, make them work. They're easy to start. These cars, they're hard to finish.
By the way, how does a build start? Are these mostly commissioned? Do you guys do spec builds? I mean, I know you've built a ton of cars for SEMA, but how does it start in general?
Typically, every one of our cars is for a customer. We've threw a random Blazer in there or something else, but 99% of the vehicles are for customers' cars that start with a rendering done by a guy by the name of Gary Regal usually, and pitch it to the owner and see if they bite. Hopefully not opening your mouth too much about a budget out front, but we've definitely had the opportunity to be able to build cars for some really interesting people that can afford to do it. So that definitely helps.
Yeah, I want to get into a few of your builds. I got a couple of favorites myself I'd love to talk to you about. Does the customer usually bring the car to you, or do they say, hey, I want a Plymouth Satellite, find me a car? How does it work usually?
I think most of the time we end up finding the car, but there's times where they have a vehicle that they bring to us. Like we've got a 61 Rolls Royce right now that the owner bought to us. We've got a 71 Aston Martin that the owner bought it off of Bring a Trailer and brought to us. So it's probably 50-50.
Yeah, that Rolls, it's getting an LS, right?
It's got an LT4 with a full independent chassis, 10-speed automatic. It should be fun. I'm pretty sure it'll be the fastest Rolls Royce in Spring Green.
And the only one.
Exactly right.
If it's the only one, it's definitely the fastest. So,
you guys, I know the tech has changed. Probably that's the thing that has changed the most in your careers, right? It's not just about panel beating and, hand fitting stuff. You've got computer aided drafting and the 3D printing, rapid prototyping, carbon fiber. So I'd love to hear about, first of all, how did you start integrating this new tech into your business? A lot of guys would probably want to keep it at arm's length, right? Because it's another thing to learn and it can be expensive to get into. And a lot of people, I think, tend to fall back on the skill set they already have. But how did you dip your toes into some of this new stuff?
Well, I think for us is we didn't have the ability to make it with steel in the beginning. We weren't that good, so we had to come up with a different way, and that's where the carbon came in. And I think a lot of people give it a bad rap or whatever, but they don't start embracing what the young generation likes to do. This hobby will be in trouble, I feel, because the young generation wants to use computers. They want to do this stuff in CAD, and some of the old timers will say, "Oh, it's just a plastic car or whatever." Whether they appreciate it or not, if you really want to get the young people involved, you better look at technology is what's coming.
Jim?
Oh, I'd have to agree with that. I think we've created a lot of really interesting things out of carbon fiber and 3D printed things that you could never make really out of tin knocking and steel. I mean, just the effects of what it is in the end, being super lightweight, super strong, and the aesthetics of, some exposed carbon, I think is really cool. It may go away. Hell, there might be a day where there's all different technology where they're building this stuff. But we've always embraced technology, and I think we've been lucky that way because we ended up having some younger guys come through our business that they actually teach us it or teach us where you can go with it. And hell, we'd be just like everybody else if we haven't met these young guys and brought them into our business. We'd still be, knocking things over a wooden block.
Well, and the other thing too is it's not just about making a fender for a 69 Camaro out of carbon. It's a Ring Brothers fender, right? So it's going to be massaged and refined. You're going to clean up the lines. In other words, it's not going to mirror a factory part at all. So that's the way you got to go.
No, I was just going to say there's a lot of that, we're changing wheelbases, we're pushing wheels forward, we're having to make everything new for the front of a 69 Camaro per se or a Dodge Charger. And, you start moving wheelbases and there's a lot of things that change in a hurry. So I think that technology has helped us. A lot of that CAD and machining of parts has helped us tremendously, building a better car and being more perfect from right side to left side. There ain't one of these old cars that are perfect from side to side.
Right. And you guys kind of, to me, I'll give you an example of extreme, right? You guys took a Mustang convertible, 64 and a half, I think, and you widened it and lengthened it by an inch. An inch. That's a huge undertaking. First of all, why just an inch? Was it just, those are the proportions that looked perfect to you? I mean, how'd that all come about?
We've done a 2-inch. Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead. Jim's right. We did one 2 inches. I remember when Jim said to do it one day, and then he's like, "Oh, we're not going to do it." But he come up with the idea about, "Oh, let's widen this thing." And then he got scared and didn't want to do it. And he went on vacation, so we did it. At least we cut the back and moved it out. And then he had to do it. But the guy that we built the Mustang, the convertible for, he saw that and goes, "It's too much for me. I want to just do an inch aside." And that's where it came. And it really does. I don't think Mustang owners see it. It's that, but it looks different and it looks better, but it's so subtle. It's so much work. Nobody would think you've ever done it because you can't just widen it. You got to move hinges out, latches, systems. You got to, everything's got to be the same proportion as it was. And once you widen it, it gets narrower in the front. It just seems like, oh, you just cut it and move it out. It's not that easy. It's all the inner structure's got to be changed.
Yeah, it's like throwing a stone in a pond, right? It's a ripple effect. You got to consider every piece.
Every piece.
Yep.
Yeah, I love how you guys massage the lines and the proportions. You'll tighten things up in one place and then you accentuate an element somewhere else. I mean, it's always cohesive. There's not a stray bit of sheet metal or trim anywhere. I challenge anyone to find a stamped part on one of your cars, like that's visible, right? Because everything looks machined, and I know you guys use a lot of billet and stuff, but it's just really, really well put together. A perfect example of what you guys do, and this is my personal favorite of all your builds, is the 72 Javelin that you did for Prestone. That car, so you moved, correct me if I'm wrong, but you moved the front wheels like 6.5 inches forward. You reshaped the fenders. I think the fenders are carbon, in fact. You got a massive hood bulge to cover that supercharger and air intake. It's really muscular. It's got a great stance. The interior's super clean. It looks almost factory. It's really fits with the era. And then the greenish gold paint sort of tops it all off, sort of the antifreeze green, right? I love that car.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's exactly right. That's a great example of Jim found the car. Well, it was a car that even the sticker in the dash for the last oil change, I had done it back in the 70s at my brother's gas station. But Jim was cooking fish at the fish fry for the church and asked Smiley if he wanted to sell that car because it's a pretty iconic car in our town. And he got him to sell it because he only had a daughter and she didn't want it. So we got it. But, you look at a Javelin and go, man, there's a lot of cool here, but that nose is way too long. It's like a Charger, there's too much in front of that wheel. And so you just go about things what your eye doesn't like. And that car there's a lot been done to that car.
That doesn't mean it's right, by the way. It just You just do what's in you and what you think is right. I mean, there's a lot of people crucified us over that car, said we ruined it, but it's what we do.
Oh no. Oh, that car's a work of art. Absolutely. And listen, those AMCs, that Dick Teague era of AMCs, they're all quirky. Like I would say most of them are half baked. They can use a lot of cleaning up. They could really, like, I would love to see you guys do a Gremlin, stretch the wheelbase a little bit, get it lower, work your magic on one of those.
Hell, we used to laugh at people in school that used to drive the AMC Pacer to school, and hell, I'd want one of them things right now. You know, back in the day, the guy that pulled up to the stoplight in his Gremlin and looked over at the guy in the Pacer and said, "What a loser," and drove away. Those cars, they're just cool now.
I got to tell you a story. In high school, when we would cruise, there was an AMC club and we made fun of them. We would pull alongside at a stoplight, and when it turned green, we would yell, "Pacers suck!" And then we would take off and they would chase us. Those guys, man, those guys had it rough because nobody gave them any respect, and they were so diehard about their AMCs.
Yeah, that's true. Go ahead. When we did the Javelin, we got a lot of people that would thank us just because we did an AMC and gave some love to that group. But, they're a Kenosha, Wisconsin car, and there's a lot of cool, that's 60, the 69, 67 AMCs are pretty cool. There's a lot of cool cars there that just need a little bit, and
Absolutely.
it's just hard finding the 401s for them anymore. So
yeah, and I imagine that, like, I'm sure you could beef the internals up. That's not a problem, right? But
we threw them away, so we couldn't tell you.
yeah,
We typically don't use any older engines in anything we do. We just upgrade them because that's electronics, fuel injection. We don't. I still
right.
like the sound of carburetors, but if you want to make them, the best fuel mileage and everything, I think injection's the way to go.
Yeah, reliability, and with this modern fuel we've got, it eats carburetors, and I'm probably not a newly built carburetor, but still, it's a problem. By the way, another car I want to put in your head. You probably have had this suggested already, but a Rambler Marlin. How cool would that be?
The Marlin. Yeah.
I don't think there's anything cool about that. I think the cool would be whatever you did to it would be the cool part.
Exactly. Yeah. Put the Ring Brothers touch on it. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought. I was going to ask you guys something else, but what were we talking about? We were talking about you were saying, Kenosha built car. Yeah, that's very cool. And you pitched that car to Prestone, right? They didn't bring it to you.
Yeah, we pitched it. They didn't want to do it either when we pitched it to them. They thought we were crazy, but it's definitely at the end of it, they were pretty happy they chose that car. And kind of the way Mike always said it, those cars were put together with parts from every manufacturer, from Ford to GM to. So in a sense, it worked out really good in Prestone's ballpark just because their antifreeze works in everything too. So it was kind of a little pitch in there, seeing how them cars came from so many different towns.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew how, just the way you described it, the Prestone Javelin. I knew that would be that way because there wasn't anyone that did a Javelin that I'm aware of to that extent. And I knew people would refer it as that, where if it was a Camaro or a Mustang, it would not have been as iconic for them of a car. I don't believe we could have picked a better vehicle. And like you said, the antifreeze color I feel for the money they spent, it got them a lot of bang.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a great car. I know what I was going to ask you guys. Whatever car you're building, you want to stick with their engine, right? So if you're building a Ford, you want to go with the Coyote and so forth. But do you guys have any particular favorites? I know you've got an awesome engine builder, but in terms of power plant, what do you guys really like?
I don't think you can beat an LS with a Whipple supercharger on it. I mean, the things are just flawless. They make great power. We normally end up turning them down because they're too much power. That white Camaro we had at SEMA this year, I think we had that thing screwed back to like 70% throttle. It was just too much for the car. So there's a lot left in that tank, but certainly don't want anybody to get hurt in these vehicles. You know, that was a full carbon car. The thing was just a missile. And but horsepower for money, it's got to be the LS base motors. I mean, you talk about changing brands. We built a 65 fastback for a gentleman. I believe he was overseas, but the only thing his guys could work on is LS motors. So we put a blown LS in that 65 fastback, and people didn't like that very much. I think even Jay Leno jabbed us a little bit on that. He slammed the hood back down after he opened it. But
so why is it okay to put a 283 Chevy in a 32 Ford, but you can't put an LS in a Mustang? I don't get that. Tell me what the cutoff line is, right?
I don't either. I actually brought that up to Jay too. I says, "What? You've never seen a Chevy motor in a 32 Ford before?" He goes, "Oh, good point."
And for that matter, you guys, I don't think there's anything prettier than a Hemi in a Deuce Coupe or something. You know, I love those Chrysler Hemis. They're just beautiful.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything better looking than a Hemi in anything. Honestly, I think they're the best looking engine ever. But we've done a lot of Elephant and a lot of Hellcats and Red Eyes now, and they're just so damn tall. Where LS just packages so easy. Coyotes are so wide, but they're a great motor. I mean, the Coyote's a great motor. It's just packaging, and then to try to make them look neat is tough. Where an LS, pretty easy to make one look clean. Hard to make a Coyote clean.
Jim?
Oh, I'd have to agree with that. It's you got to make a giant engine cover for a Coyote, or just leave the hood shut. They're not good looking motors, but they run well. I mean, they work if you can get them in there.
And for the most part, we're talking about a crate engine, right? You're not. Are you guys tearing them down? Is Wegner tearing them down for you before you put them in, or
not the Coyote? We haven't really built one with big power, Mustangs and stuff, or pickups, and they make great. They make like 460, and that's a lot. I mean, they run really good, and it's like you don't have to tear them apart just to tear them apart. It's like changing parts on a car just to do it. You don't mess with the grill. You don't mess with, an engine that's put together well. You don't need all that. But you can turbo. We're turboing one now. It'll be our first turbo car. And it's just, we're not putting much boost to it at all. Just more for the look portion of the Coyote. So,
Mike, was that an owner request?
No, that was our request to the owner.
That's in that.
There's something to be said about the whine of a supercharger, though. I love it.
Yeah. When Jim's in that Chevelle, you go look at. There's a video with Jim driving and Jay driving that Chevelle. That car just sounds pretty cool with that supercharger. There's obviously a lot faster cars in the world, but that car is still very stout. All you want. You
guys, another one of your builds that I really love is the yellow 69 Charger that you guys built for Greg Murphy, right?
Yep.
Man. So that's another really good example of how, like, at first glance, you didn't change a whole lot of the appearance, but then you start to look closely and the lines are just like sharp and tight. Yeah. What did you do there? Well, I know one of the things you did was the front valence, right? You sort of kicked up the nose a little bit in the front and you reworked the rockers. Tell me more about that car.
Well, the owner already had the quarters done, which I like. Some people don't. I actually like it. It's actually, Chargers kind of really fall off on the quarter. They actually cut it and raised it 2 inches in the back. So the lights in the back, everything, if you look at the car from the side profile, it looks a lot fatter toward the back end of the car than a regular Charger. So that's like 2 inches up, which, just subtle things there. He had Art Moore's chassis, but the bottom of that car is spectacular. Put a couple fuel fillers in it. We put one on each side so you can come up to either side of the pump. But it's very stock looking, but a lot of work's been done to that too.
You moved the front wheels ahead on that car also, didn't you?
No, because that was a stock
Chassis.
chassis when we got it. So
I'm mistaken that for other ones we have here now. So.
By the way, speaking of chassis, how has the custom chassis aftermarket changed the handling and the road performance of these cars? Because these cars are massive. Even though you've lightened a lot of them up with the carbon and everything, they were just never good handling cars. So how has that changed now that we've got this like stuff from Detroit Speed and so forth?
Their stuff just works. Kyle was an engineer at GM. He figured out what it took to make it work and make it feel the way it felt. And the same way for the Roadster shop, for that matter. We've been using their chassis a lot in our builds, and they always just seem to work and feel good and feel right. I've questioned them on trying to follow the OEMs a little bit closer with some of that supercar stuff, like the Vets and the Camaros using like struts, and they said we don't have enough money to do that. So basically, they're trying to build a product that really works and works well in the vehicle, that'll actually go into the vehicle without major surgery. And I think they do a great job with it.
Yeah, they've done an amazing job.
By the way, wheels and tires are a huge deal. I know you guys really like the HRE wheels on your builds, but we're talking about much wider rubber than these cars ran when they were new. So how much do you have to rework the inner wheel wells quite a bit and massage the track and all of that?
Yeah, there's nothing when we get the chassis, first thing we do, we shell out the body and put it over, but the first thing we do is build the exhaust, and then we build the floors around the exhaust, so there's plenty of clearance. And obviously we tub the car as wide as we need to. So yeah, tires are they all look massive till you put them underneath the car, and then for some reason those cars just gobble them up. You wish you had them wider and wider. You can see why guys went to pro street sometimes. They couldn't get them wide enough. So
Yeah,
but you still want them to handle. And I prefer if we could get a bigger sidewall like the old days, but that's just not with the brakes and the spindle size. You can't do it. So
I'm with you though, Mike. I like that wide sidewall look. That was the performance tire back in the day.
right. I always wondered why. I told Jim 100 times why they can't make a tire, because you can make the rim with a 15-inch sidewall on one side and an 18 on the other side. I'm sure those engineers could make a tire that way. That way you could have the rim diameter look, and even for new cars, I would give them all a different look where it would look old school and not these skinny. And then, you can build the 3-piece wheel with the 18-inch hoop. So it's just to make the tire manufacturers make a tire where it would look small. It would look like a 15, but it could still go over the big brakes and everything else. So I don't know. I've said it a bunch of times that nobody's made it happen yet, but I think it would be pretty cool for our industry and for the OEs. I feel like they could give it a true old school feel on a lot of their stuff, because the rubber bands are kind of on a muscle car.
I'm with you. Plus the 60s styling, the 70s styling, a taller sidewall just fits. It just looks like it's in its place.
Yeah. Well, you look at Jeeps, them guys are running those, 42s, 44s, and they're all running on 17-inch rims. So they look just all tire, they don't, those Jeeps look better than a 20 or 22. In my opinion, they look better with a lot of sidewall. So feel like the automakers could convince a tire maker to make something. I'm sure they could put more in one side to even out the stability because one is got that much more sidewall. But anyway, I feel you could make a pretty cool product at the end.
I mean, it might just come down to how many of those tires can they sell a year, for what they would have into them. But
somebody makes Bonneville tires, right? How many of them you sell? So
good point. Hey, let's talk about the big build from SEMA in 2022, that 48 Chevy pickup. The thing was insane. I think it's probably your most outrageous build yet.
Yeah, it was a fun project. We actually pitched that to the guy years ago. He wanted to build what he called a rat rod with one of his boat motors. He had these twin supercharged 2,500 horse motors out of his boat that they run down in Lake of the Ozarks, and he didn't like the motors in his boat, so he wanted to build a what he called a rat rod out of it. And the motor was as tall as the truck is right now. It was never going to work, and we told him that, and he got frustrated and basically walked away from that project. And then, lo and behold, a few years later, he ended up coming back and said, let's do this project. Well, he had bought the motor from, I think, one of his employees or somebody that works for him or with him or did. And so that's how that truck kind of got started.
Yeah, and it's basically an open wheel race car with melded with a 48 Chevy. Kind of a Formula One car almost with a pickup truck body.
Yeah, the thing really, I still think it needs a carbon fender over each wheel, something really petite that, because it's a portable sandblaster right now. I mean, them big, giant, sticky tires, you feel like you're in a parade getting showered with candy in that thing. It's just stuff flying everywhere.
Wow. Jim, did you manage to do a few donuts in that thing before it headed off to Vegas?
No, I did a little burnout, but that truck scares the hell out of me for some reason. I don't know if it's just the sound or what, but I haven't even put my foot in that at all yet.
Well, I know you like to do burnouts and donuts. If this car thing doesn't work out, you could open a donut shop.
There you go.
By the way, you guys tend to give names to all your builds. It makes sense, right? That 48 Chevy is called the Enyo. Where does that name come from?
The owner chose that name. It has something to do with the Greek goddess of war that I think chooses who lives or dies or something on the order of that. But funny part of the name of that truck, it kind of got out before SEMA, and we pulled into SEMA with the trailer, and some guy very cleverly come up and said, "What's in your trailer?"
Nice. I love it. How was it getting back to SEMA after, COVID and all of that? I know, it's the biggest show of the year, right? So
4 cars out there this year, and that was tough. I mean, we hadn't been there for 2 years, so we had 4 vehicles there, 3 cars and that big K5 Blazer. That was a rough SEMA.
All the pent up energy, and everybody's had their stuff like backlogged, basically, right? All these builds, plus the supply chain problems.
Yeah, there was a lot of, for not being there for 2 years, there was a lot of new iron there, and it was a lot of really cool stuff there this year. And we felt pretty lucky to find our way to the top, at least for the Battle of the Builders. It was pretty nice. Right on.
I would love to talk to you guys a little bit about your team. I think your team deserves a lot of credit, and you've said yourselves you can't do this alone, but I'd love to talk about that a little bit because the trades are important. I think we're losing a lot of skills, and yet there's all these new skills to be learned, this new technology that we talked about. So how important is that to you to find skilled employees, and it's everything, right?
Absolutely. Especially in a small town of 1,600 people. That's, and the towns around us aren't that big either, but we've definitely been blessed to find some really talented people in our area that I believe really enjoy what they're doing.
Yeah, and it goes back to getting the young generation who want to use technology. And, we do a lot of job shadowing. We have a lot of kids from the high school, and some of them are Ryan, he's become a great employee and runs the machining side back there. And it's the young generation. And like I said, you got to keep them involved. And it's you get people. We put ads in for people, but when they're from a long ways away, and you invest time, and everybody wants to go back home typically, and it's a challenge for all shops to get people to move and become a permanent staple. And we're lucky, and the guys we have are pretty much all local. And like Jim said, like what they do, but we couldn't do this without them. We've always said we're the Ring Brothers, but it's a lot of people behind the Ring Brothers that make us look good.
Incidentally, do you guys participate in any kind of apprenticeship programs or anything like that?
Yeah, we do it almost every year. We either have college engineers that want to learn machining to programming, design work. So we have them. We have the kids at high school that come over a few hours a week. But yeah, we've always embraced that. It can be tough sometimes as business owners to do it, but it's all been really worth it.
I love that. I just see so many kids that have so few skills, like they can't make it come out of their hands. You know what I mean? And
Right.
it's something that I've tried to pass on to my own kids. Like, a couple years ago, I taught my daughter how to adjust the valves on my motorcycle, and she loved it. It was fun. So it's just really important to me. And it matters a lot to guys like you, of course, who you're trying to do the highest caliber of work, and you want the highest caliber of talent.
No doubt.
Yeah, or the highest caliber of energy or willing to learn, because they want to be here. There'll be a spot, right? So it's the guys that go over and above to just get in the door, which seem to work out. They may not have all the ability, but they want to be here, and they find a spot. They make themselves unable to fire them because they're too good at what they do. So
Yeah, that's good. You want that close-knit team, right? You don't want a revolving door of employees. You want to be able to keep somebody there, and then you're all on the same page more, right?
absolutely, they kind of know how you think. Or
By the way, when you guys start a build, do you get the team together and sit around a big table and say, okay, let's lay some plans out? Does that happen? Or give me a sense of how you guys start on paper or on a computer or whatever.
I think for the most part, it starts with the owner trying to listen to what they want and then trying to get it put on paper of some sort, whether that be Sean or Gary or somebody to get them excited about the project. And then, it kind of floats through the shop with the people that would be involved looking at it and either thumbs up or thumbs down. But for the most part, it's selling that customer on what your ideas is. And once you get him on board, becomes a lot easier.
yeah, I think a lot of people think that, they look at the outer part of the car, right? And that's the car. But really, all the work is what's underneath that to make everything packaged, to figure out the wiring, the fuel systems, all the things, all the bracketry to hold the headlights. So, how you mount. I mean, that's the much harder part than the outside body. And that's why doing it in carbon or whatever you do it, you still got to be a hot rodder to make it all come together and work. You still have to have all the inner structure that's built, even if it is a carbon shell, right? So it's just another medium of an outer shell. But all the work in these cars are things that people take for granted or don't even think about. It's everything. If you could strip off the skin of the car, that's where all the money is. It's not the outer sheet metal, what people judge a car by.
Yeah. Just a quick example would be the way that you guys hide all the wiring. It blows my mind. I don't know how you guys do it. because eventually it's got to make its way from the firewall to the engine, right? You guys do an awesome job. The other thing too is the cars have to be serviceable, right? These aren't just show cars. People are going to use them. They need to be able to work on them, or somebody needs to be able to work on them.
And I think that's every time you build a car, Jim's always harping on exactly that. Like, goddamn, we can't always take these things apart to get to the fuse box or get to the AC or, so we've actually become more like the OEs and try to show all the fittings and where it needs to be and, make things easy to get at if you got to work on it because you're going to have to work on them. That's the guarantee is that they will have to come apart. Try to make room. Try not to have the exhaust so damn tight and the header so tight. And it's the same thing we fight every time, but it's just that's where when you say we get together and talk, that's about a lot more on that subjects than the outside sheet metal.
Jim, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I'm always harping because quite honestly, I'm the guy getting stuck putting this thing together and trying to bring it to life in the end. And it's amazing the littlest stuff will just drive you crazy that would have took 5 minutes under construction. And now it takes 5 days to do because everything's painted and pretty and you're trying to figure out a different way. But, just the other day I was harping on a lot of the fab guys over there about not putting a ground lug on the chassis so I can ground the engine to it because I always like to have stuff where I'm at and ground lugs where they need to be so I ain't trying to drill and tap a hole underneath. So just to be smart asses, they took a 2.5-inch thick threaded rod with a nut the size of my hand and welded it on the chassis and it was sticking up through the hood. And they said, "Here, we didn't forget your ground lug this time." So I walk over there. You couldn't even put the engine in it because this giant shaft is coming out of the top of the hood. So they get what I'm talking about.
It's fun though. That's one thing about work here. It's fun. We laugh a lot. We sing. We dance. We do a lot of dumb things, but everybody has fun.
Oh, it's great. I love it. That's kind of part and parcel of having a tight team, right?
Yeah.
By the way, you mentioned OEMs, and I don't think we should ignore the parts side of the business because you've created all these awesome, sometimes one-off components for all these cars. And I got to say that billet has come a long way from where it was in the 80s and 90s. It looks a lot slicker, and your stuff it's a signature line of parts, right? Let's talk about that.
We've created a lot of these parts just in building the cars that we build. We're trying to create better hinges or better door handles or better taillights or whatever it may be. And they all come about because of something we've built. So not only are we building these parts for the aftermarket and for other people, we know they work because we're building them for what we do. I mean, there's a lot of people building parts out there that's never even bolted them to a car or maybe once or don't even understand why it's frustrating to install or whatever. So I think that's the reason we know when we build our parts that they actually work because they're being built for a project that we're doing. And it's been a pretty good little business for us on the side to be able to, we first started out just doing it for ourselves, and then you'd get somewhere and somebody'd say, "Can I buy them?" And finally, it took a while, but the light bulb went off and said, "We might as well be selling this stuff if we're making it anyway."
When you have to go outside for a part, would you say that you guys have the leverage now where OEMs are going to listen to you? And
absolutely not. No, we're just a couple flies in the soup. We do what we do, and they do what they do, and it's cool stuff. One thing, Mike always said, we still do collision work, and we get to tear apart a lot of very nice, expensive cars, and it's really cool to see how the OEMs are putting this stuff together and what they're using inside these cars, and that's helped us tremendously building the cars on some of the ideas that they have come up with or have created, putting their vehicles together. So that's kind of cool to be able to see that technology when you get to tear these cars apart.
I can just imagine because working on cars my whole life, working on stuff from the 60s and 70s, and then trying to tear into a car from the 2000s, it is a completely different animal. Just the fasteners alone and the fit of components together, it completely different.
We've got a brand new Ferrari in here that got ran through a car wash and just scratched everything. And we got the whole front nose off of that thing, and you ought to see the bolts and parts in the front of that car. It's just mind-boggling.
The way they laid the radiators down and a lot of cool things though. I mean, the radiators are laying flat, it's like just crazy cool things to be able to, if you didn't have the collision side, you wouldn't be able to see this stuff, right? I mean, you see them from looking at them on the outside, but you don't get to tear into one to see how they're made. So it's really cool. And it gives you ideas for, you may not use it ever, or you may use it on your next build. So
Yeah, how they have cooling lines or just steel hard lines or aluminum hard lines that are coiled back and forth inside of a 4-foot ductwork piece that you'd never even think to do that. But, you tear that Ferrari apart and here they got these coolers laying flat inside of a tube that's halfway down the fender. It's just kind of cool.
Yeah, it is cool. And it's not just about the design process where, this is possible because of the power of computing, right? How different components can be snug up next to one another and so forth. But also you got to think about the manufacturing process. It's got to be assembled somehow. Of course, a lot of it's being done by robots now, but it's amazing how things fit together. So when we were all kids, you could pretty much figure out how something went together. You could disassemble it and pretty much get it right. Good luck now.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, for an old car, though, one of the most difficult cars that I've ever put together is this 61 Rolls Royce that we're doing right now. That car, just very difficult to put together. I mean, everything is straight blade screws, and everything is there's no studs on anything, and how they actually got enough hands to even start half of the bolts and screws in that car, and it's all British standard, and it's the most horrible car I've ever put together in my life, and I hope I never have to do another one.
It sounds like typical British stuff, a lot of hand built stuff and like 3 times as many fasteners as you think you'd need.
Oh yeah, just in the weirdest spots. Like it's just a very difficult car. The way the whole window assembly is going, the window regulators are at least 150 pounds apiece. Them motors, you could literally roll logs in a logging factory with them. They're just chain drive. Like you put your head in that power window and your head's gone.
Well, listen, you guys, you've been really generous with your time today, and I want to thank you. This is a real treat for me. If anyone's curious, which they should be, they need to go to ringbrothers.com, right?
Yeah, get on ringbrothers.com. Check out a lot of our new products we've come out with. There's a lot of interesting stuff that you guys have never seen before. We got a lot of new hinge lines out, and if we can ever be any help, just give us a call.
One of the things I like that you guys do is the steering wheels. That was so overlooked for so long in the aftermarket industry. The choices were not good. The wheels were cheesy, and you guys have made some awesome steering wheels.
Yeah, our steering wheels, we take pride in that. We've done billet steering wheels before, and anybody that has a billet wheel, they'll know they're way too heavy. They feel wrong in a car. All that weight out on it. It's weird how you can feel that. So with our carbon hoop and then the billet centers, it's really made them really nice, but the carbon is amazing, and it's a look that I don't believe anybody else is doing. Plus, there's depth to them. They're not just a flat steering wheel typically that you see out there. There's 5 inches from the hub to the steering wheel itself, and the hub is built into the steering wheel, so it's not a separate adapter hub to your steering wheel. It's all thought out, all the things that bothered us, and we've got 3 designs now, and we're working on more. So I know they seem pricey, but if you do a one-off steering wheel out of billet, you'll spend more than that and it'll feel really goofy. And you can always wrap this carbon too if you wanted it leather, which still makes it much lighter and a whole different feel with a cool design.
Yeah, don't nickel and dime your project, right? A steering wheel, you're going to have your hands on that steering wheel for however many years you own the car. You might as well get a nice one.
Yeah. If you can get over the dog, you can get over the tail.
I love it. Mike and Jim Ring, the Ring Brothers from Spring Green, Wisconsin. Once again, you guys go to ringbrothers.com, check out the line of parts and all these amazing builds. Fellas, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Maurice. Thanks for having us. It's been fun. Look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, I hope we can do it again. And
listen, you guys, when you get out to LA, I would love to see your latest.
Sounds like a plan.
That's all for this episode of Horsepower Heritage. If you like what you've heard, go to buymeacoffee.com/HP Heritage and support the show, tell your friends, write a review, because all of that helps me reach more gearheads like you. Lots of good stuff in the mix to look forward to, so stay with me, and I'll see you back here on Wednesday, May 31st, when we'll be talking about American muscle for the 21st century. It's a new paradigm of performance and design. I'm really excited to bring this one to you because I think it's the most comprehensive interview that's been done in any media format by these two gentlemen. Revolutionary hypercars that rewrite the book on the auto industry. My guests are Kevin and Lucas Zinger of Zinger Vehicles. They're building groundbreaking cars here in California. So until then, I'm Maurice Merrick. Thanks for listening.